On the feast of John Paul II, I find it only fitting to start today's episode with one of my favorite quotes of his. He has so many good ones. But this is today's. It is Jesus you seek when you dream of happiness. He is waiting for you when nothing else you find satisfies you. He is the beauty to which you are so attracted. It is He who provokes you with that thirst for fullness that will not let you settle for compromise. It is He who urges you to shed the masks of a false life. It is He who reads in your hearts your most genuine choices, the choices that others try to stifle. It is Jesus who stirs in you the desire to do something great with your lives, the will to follow an ideal, the refusal to allow yourself to be grounded down by mediocrity, the courage to commit yourself humbly and patiently to improving yourselves and society, making the world more human and more fraternal. End quote. I love this so much. I hope you do too. And a couple parts stick out to me. Pope John Paul II is talking about Jesus stirring the desire within us to do something great and to refuse to be grounded by mediocrity and to courageously commit to something humbly and patiently that improves not only ourselves, but our society as well. And so I am so excited today to have a guest who is going to talk to us about ways that we can practically live out the liturgical year, that we can follow along with what is going on in our church, and ways that we can incorporate the beauty of the lives of the saints in our own homes. And it doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be overwhelming, but it can just be really simple and it can start small. And again, it's just one more entry point where we can live out our faith and we can go deeper into the life of Christ and the life of those who have inspired us and who we can aspire to follow in their footsteps. So thank you, Pope John Paul II. I hope you guys love this one as much as I do, as I am joined by my dear friend and Catholic coach, Mitzi. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker, Kylie Hein. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I am joined by my beautiful friend, Mitzi Moore. Mitzi is a Catholic homeschooling mama of 3. She's also a certified Catholic mindset coach. That is how I met her, and I'm so grateful for her friendship. She helps parents step into their role as their children's primary faith educator by creating content and sharing resources. And Mitzi, I absolutely love what you do. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kylie.
You have some awesome resources, and this will be airing toward the end of October. October is the month of the Rosary, but we also have All Saints Day coming up. And I know you do so much with the saints. What are some of your favorite activities that you can share?
Oh, man. Well, liturgical living is really dear and close to my heart. So I try to incorporate it any way that I can, whether it's, celebrating the feast days. But one of my most awesomest things that I love to do is hosting our All Saints Day event. So this is going to be the 3rd year that we do it. And I really wish it was in a place where more people can come because I have friends in different states. And sadly, I am not able to go everywhere. But for this particular event, I host at my house and I invite families to come. It's a free event and they can just enjoy themselves and have some snacks. I always try to have an educative factor to it. So last year I was really focusing on the younger saints, those that were, children or just very young adults when they became saints. And we do raffles. So awesome raffle prizes to help parents continue to do the education at home, and everyone gets to dress up. So that's always fun, and it has grown every year. So that has been probably like my favorite way to celebrate Saints Day.
Do you have a favorite saint?
Oh man, I have a few. I definitely have a top 5. St. Paul is my current best friend.
Oh,
I resonate a lot with him, and it's someone that I didn't quite fully understand, I think, when I was younger, but now going, through my own tribulations and things as an adult, I've really resonated with him. So he's my BFF saint right now.
what have you or how have you grown closer to the saints through? I know you kind of started this liturgical living process. This wasn't where you thought you were going to be right now. This wasn't the thing that you thought you were going to be doing, but here you are. How did that kind of happen, or what shifts have happened in your faith?
Oh, that's a good question. So I always had an interest in working with the youth and evangelizing since I was really young. So I actually became a catechist when I was 16. And I had this desire to work with teenagers pretty much. Teenagers have always had a special place in my heart. I think because when I was younger, I, saw a lot of hurt youth that were going through the motions, and I wanted to basically show them that, religion has a very beautiful depth to it and that they are not alone and they have a loving and caring God that is looking after them. So that was my primary focus, to teach confirmation, to work with the teenagers. And everything was going well. I eventually got to that point. I've worked pretty much with all ages, but the one thing that I really noticed was lacking was the parent involvement. Mainly because since as a catechist, you're really only working with the student. There was, and I think it happened, thankfully, when I became pregnant and I became a parent myself, that, the child has a lot of influence around them. So that's kind of when I really started looking at, well, how are parents feeling about this? What is their involvement like? What is their personal spiritual journey? And how is that affecting their children? And so when I became a parent, I realized, now I have my small children that I want to raise in the faith. And I always knew that is something that I was going to be doing once I had children, but there was something that hit differently when I think everything just I had this aha moment and I was like, well, what if we started focusing on, teaching the faith when we have our infants, and then hopefully we won't come across some of the issues that we're having come like confirmation year with rebellious youth not wanting to be part of the faith. So that's when I really fell in love with, like, let me do everything that I can within whatever God wants me to do to help parents feel supported in starting this education when their child is born.
Yeah. And a couple of things I just want to highlight here because I've had these conversations with you. Number one, I love that you're just starting in your own home. So often we're looking at how we can serve the Lord and we're like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What do we need to do, Lord? I'm here to do whatever you want. And we latch on to a million things, but we know it's like start in your own home, starts in your own house. And we neglect our own house because sometimes we're frustrated with our own children or whatever it happens to be, or we think it needs to be bigger or grand or more exciting, but it really does start in our own homes. And I have found that in teaching my faith to my children, my faith life is growing. They're like my accountability people. My son, I've talked
Mhm.
about this before, he's the one who will call me out, or he knows if he wants more time with me at bedtime, he'll be like, "Mom, will you pray with me more?"
Oh, I love that.
Because if he asks to pray, he knows I'm more likely to be like, "Okay, I'll stay and cuddle you a little bit longer."
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that.
Have you found that to be true for you as well?
100%. 100%. Never have I ever been most humbled in my life than in being a parent. And I too have a child that likes to call me out, my 6-year-old, who will occasionally say, like, you should really bring this to confession. I'm like, I know. So glad you are observant here. And so, yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about starting at home, Mother Teresa really inspired me when they have like that. What is it? The story of when she's talking to someone like a younger individual and they wanted to do what she did, and she said, "No, we don't need you to go out. Like you have a lot of work to do where you're at," and that has always really stuck with me. So just doing the best to start at home and uh, I don't think it was by accident, and I see that as a blessing now that when I grew up, I grew up in a home where there was a lot of involvement. My parents, everybody knew them, everybody knew who they were, and there was a lot of outside involvement. Everybody, like, loved my sister and me because we were involved in everything, but it was lacking at home. It's almost like we were so tired of, like not tired, but we were so spent with outwardly showing our faith that when we got home, we just we were missing that. I mean, we did pray and stuff, but it wasn't as in depth. And I think that experience really inspired me to want to do that even more at home, even to the point where I've been a little reluctant with getting as involved in ministry just because I want to make sure that my priority is at home first. And I think there has been fruit in that. Like, as much as I don't like being called out, I think it's a blessing because it's like, wow, she gets it. She understands that this is me turning away from God. And I'm able to have these very deep conversations, theological conversations with my young child who I know is not going to understand everything, but I mean, I could see that growth. I could see the fruit of putting that priority at home. So, yeah, 100% agree with you.
What does it look like to start living liturgically at home? Because I know when I grew up, I mean, yes, there was mass every week, and we celebrated Christmas and Easter in those big days. But I don't think I really ever paid attention to the feast days of the saints or some of those other lesser known special days of the church year. Where do people start? Whether they have kids or if they're just on their own and they want to start doing this for themselves to just be more in line with the liturgical year, where should or where could they start?
Yes, I want to say same here. I mean, I'm Mexican, so I grew up with like the a lot of heavy feast days when it comes to December and those days, but other than that, like you said, it was just like major holidays and that's it. So I really didn't start diving into this until I had my own children, and I'm not really quite sure when it started, which is a Holy Spirit moment right there, but I just know that that's when I really started looking into the different saints. And I would say that I highly encourage everyone, family or single, individuals to look into liturgical living because you are building up your spiritual community is the way I like to see it. And bringing in the saints as inspiration of what we are trying to achieve. Like if the end game is for us to get to heaven, then let's surround ourselves with as much of that influence so that we continue to want to desire it even when it is hard. And so that is my goal when it comes to liturgical living is let me try to bring as many reminders into the home of what our mission is. Our mission is sainthood. And so I highly recommend looking into your interest. What are things that you either aspire to be if you're younger, or what are some causes that are important to you? And there's a saint for that. Fairly certain there's a saint for that. I mean, you could never go wrong, obviously, turning to our Blessed Mother and Saint Joseph, who I have really come to appreciate a lot more when I became a parent. But even looking at your name, if you're named after any saint, many people, many Catholic individuals are. I am not. So I had to be one that just I realized my name is actually Marian. So I decided like, what special Marian apparition do I feel drawn to? And for me, it's Our Lady of Fatima, which the day of the Miracle of Dancing Sun is on my birthday, October 13th, for those that did not know. So I feel a special, very special call on that particular day. So that's who I have chosen. And it's just kind of starting small, there, and then just expanding as you get to know other saints. I have heard that there are many people that feel a little bit stalked by saints, that they just kind of keep on popping up into their lives. So just be open and ask God, like, who send me the saints that you know are going to help me on my journey and reveal them to me. And if you're like me, in very obvious ways, so that I know that this is who you want me to be looking into.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better. Pray about it. You can't go wrong with the Blessed Mother or with Saint Joseph. Just started. I'm about a little over a weekend with the Saint Joseph consecration, and
That's
so
so
many
good.
saints had great devotions to him. Saint Teresa of Avila was one, and she's like, you can't go wrong with him because next to Mary, he is going to give you, grace over anything. Like there are a lot of saints who are known for specific things,
Mhm.
but he's just like everything. So if you
Yeah.
can't find one, St. Joseph might be a good place to start. And I was thinking as you
Mhm.
talked about Mary, because there are so many names for Mary: Star of the Sea, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Fatima. I mean, you could just go on and on. And it reminded me, I recently did a prayer exercise where I was praying with, what is the name? I'm not gonna remember the exact wording, but it's something like, "What is the name that the Lord desires me to call him?" Because we think, like, there's Jesus and then there's the Holy Spirit, but there was a whole list of other names, and Abba was the one that came to me, which was so strange because I never, ever use that in prayer, ever. The only time I ever say Abba is, like, when I was a kid, there was a song that said, "Abba, Father, you are the
Yep.
potter."
Mhm.
That's it. That's the only time. But I felt uncomfortable with it at first, but it kept coming up and I started using that in prayer. And it is so
Yeah.
crazy. Like it's just opened up so many things. So maybe pray about that with the Blessed Mother. What is the name that you desire me to call you?
Mm. That's beautiful.
And see what
Yeah.
comes up. And October is so full of so many saints and so many feast days. So for someone who's like, okay, I'm going to do liturgical living, and they print off the feast day calendar for October, and they're like, there are a million on here. By the time this comes out, it'll be closer to November. But how do you know where to start?
Yeah, I you will be overwhelmed, and I will have to say that if you're doing liturgical living hoping that you're going to do all of the saints, you're so you really need to be selective when you're starting off and then grow. That would be very realistic. Like, you know what? Let me and a namesake I think is a very good place to start, or near your birthday. What are some saints around your birthday that you can start looking at? Whether again you're named after a saint or there's someone close to a very special uh date in your life, I would really start there just so that you have some kind of connection and it will be easier for you to remember what their feast day is. And then from there, just kind of expand to, causes and different things like that. That would be my recommendation. Obviously, there's like some of the main saints that are known within both the Catholic sphere and the secular world, like St. Patrick, St. Valentine, St. Nicholas. And I mean, if you look at their stories, I highly recommend dive deep into their stories because the secular world does not do them justice one bit. And I think sometimes we only know like a fraction of their life. When you actually really get to know them, you realize, oh my goodness, these people were amazing. And so yeah, that's kind of where I would start and then just expand from there. You'll find that in no time you're going to start coming across other saints, either that were inspired by the saint that you're looking for or, different things. So that would be my recommendation. Keep it simple to start off with. Don't try to do everything. I would even say maybe just once a month is looking into one saint, because something important to consider is that the purpose, for me at least, to celebrate a feast day is that you are going to be inspired by the individual that you are remembering on that day. And I think sometimes what may get lost at times is, you hear the story, you do the activity, you do an activity and then it's done. And I have to say that this year, one thing that has really helped me dive in closer with liturgical living in general is that I have missed the day of the feast day for almost every single thing that I have been wanting to observe. It's like I observe them like, I don't know, 2 days later or a week later. But the thing is, it's like the feast day is just the day that they're remembered, but hopefully that entire month they'll serve up as a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is what they did. Let me remember them all month, all year, and may that be the starting point of when I start keeping them a little bit closer in my heart. Not so much, let's just do the one day and be done. So, if I may offer some type of tip here, is don't be discouraged if it's like, oh, I missed their feast day. It's okay. Still do something to remember them so that you have like that hands on to, keep them in your mind, like develop a core memory, if you will, and then just keep going. So it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to do all the big things. Just keep it small. And honestly, the whole purpose of it, the whole goal should be how is this individual bringing you closer to God, helping you grow in your journey?
Did you know that human formation is the foundation to your spiritual castle? That is just one of the many reasons why Catholic coaching is on the rise. In a world where you find yourself placing your worth in perfection, praise, and productivity, God wants you to know that you are worthy simply because He has created you. In the words of Joshua Metcalf, my value comes from who I am, not what I do. And yours does too. If you're ready for a foundation that is free of overwhelm, self-criticism, and lashing out at your loved ones while you're chasing your dreams, come join me for a free one-on-one confidence and clarity call. You'll see transformation in just 20 minutes. Click the link in the show notes to schedule. Yes. Do you have any favorite activities as a parent or that your kids have really loved that you've done over the last few years as you're celebrating the saints?
Oh, there are so many. There are there's so many. Saint Nicholas is one that I've actually been consistent with every single year, and I'm proud of myself. That's like probably the only one I actually get down. I love giving them something and showing them a different perspective of Saint Nicholas, just because I think there's, you know, sometimes a lot of competition between like, oh, Santa, Saint Nicholas, and not saying that you have to choose, but that's always one that's been really big for them. Saint Patrick is always really, really, really close to our family. So we love listening to his story on that day. I have some personal favorites of my own. As an adult, I think as parents, we need to remember ourselves. I love San Martin de Porres. His feast day is actually November 3rd. So it's coming up, but I really appreciate him as a mom. So on that day, it's like, let me find all the ways to serve my family, which I know as a parent, we always do, but it's like, let me be extra intentional about the way that I'm serving everybody today. So I mean, those are three of our top ones, but any that we can get food in, honestly, we're big foodies over here. So Saint Teresa of Calcutta, let's get some Indian food over here. Like we just love exploring the saints through food, learning about their culture. So, and
I
Saint Joseph is another one.
I love that. The idea of bringing food into anything just always sounds like a good idea. And just like you said, it doesn't have to be on their day. I think of St. Nicholas Day, which is December 6th, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
But I'm always in my mind, I'm always thinking about Christmas and I'm always like, I have time. I have time to get stuff. And then it's the night before when you're supposed to, put the stuff in the shoes. And I'm like, what do I have in the house? So I'm still learning. I am still learning. And I think that's where we just always have to give ourselves grace in everything, not just in liturgical living, but in our faith life as well. And I know this is something that you've talked about is to catechize your children at home. You don't have to know everything.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, you don't. I know significantly more now than I ever did before. I have a better understanding now of things that I thought I knew before children. And suddenly now I'm just like, oh my goodness, what just happened? Like, I finally understand that. And if it wasn't that I had my children to walk with me in that, I may not have come to that realization until much later. So I'm very grateful for my children in all the opportunities that motherhood brings for me to grow closer. And I really did not grow up. I think growing up, maybe we had like 6 feast days, if that. But now I think last year I kind of did a count because I did a post on it. I think we had like 42 saints that we observed throughout the year. And it's not because like, oh, I'm gonna start and I'm gonna just do all of this stuff. It's like, no, every single year we've either added some or just done a little bit more with the feast day, but it did not start off with much. And I love that as a parent, being able to learn alongside my child and then seeing, the little light bulb when they're like, oh, right. You know who that is? It's just, it's so inspiring because when it feels like we're kind of failing in our motherhood, whether it be like, oh, I could be more patient or I could be praying more or all of this. It's those little reassurances from God through our children that it's like, okay, all right. Thank you for the little thumbs up that I get from God in that moment. And yeah, never strive for perfection because we are not going to get there. We are not going to get there. But that's the beautiful thing is that even our Blessed Mother, in all her faith, as a parent of God, that steps in. And even when things did not go well, like her, the nativity, she had to be on a donkey for however long when labor in a barn. Like I cannot even imagine that. When just all of the different things, like when Jesus got lost, it's like you see all these examples by our heavenly ancestors that are giving us reassurance. And when we do feast days, when we learn about the saints, we come to learn how many times their lives were not perfect and they still said yes to God. And if they could do it and God was able to work through them, I've got a chance because I know for a fact. I may not be sure about a lot of things, but I know for a fact that God created me out of love, and he wants to be reunited with me. And I know I have all of these wonderful examples to help me achieve that. So I think for me, that has been the biggest takeaway and why I continue to do the small traditions. And yes, it is for my children, but it's also a lot for me. I think I grow so much in being able to share that little piece of our faith with them and then just seeing how they blossom through that.
Mhm.
All right, tangent.
No, I love it. It's so good. And I think once you invite the saints into your life and you see the fruits of it, you're like, okay, I need more of that. They are
Yes.
praying with me, they are
Mhm,
interceding for me. And I love seeing my children grow attached to certain saints. And I mean, our feast
mhm,
day celebration a lot of times is no more than at the end of the night when we kind of do our litany of saints. The kids kind of go through and say saints, and then we say pray for us, but we always try to include whoever the saint of the day is. It's a
mhm,
great way for them to learn new saints and to hear stories about different saints. And it's not a big thing, but then also teaching them to pay attention at Mass for that saint's name that often gets mentioned. And I think that's really great too. It's just one more way to participate in the Mass, to pay attention. It's something to look for because they do talk about those saints. And, growing up, I think I missed that. I missed that part of it. I never really paid attention or never really realized why they said certain saints' names on certain days.
mhm. That is so true, and even, like, the color, like, when we have a martyr and the priest wears red, like, I can show my daughter that, and she's like, "Oh, he's wearing a different color," and it's like, "That's right," and I'm like, "Wait, whose feast day was it today?"
Yes.
And it's the connection in that moment. I, 100% agree.
Our priest mentions that often when he does the daily mass with our kids from the Catholic school. And I'm so grateful for that, of just how much they are learning, whether they're paying attention or not. If they keep hearing it enough, it's going to sink in and be really special. So, you do liturgical living, you talk with your kids about the saints, you're teaching moms how to do this with their own children in their own homes. But something else that you are also really great at is organization and decluttering. And you talk about how that can be a spiritual thing Tell me more about it. I want all of your tips because I love to
Uh,
organize, but staying
right?
organized.
And how much time do we have? Well, uh, my to kind of sum it up a little bit, my journey into minimalism started probably with I think I may have been pregnant with my second at that time. So I've been on this journey for about 4 years, more or less. And it kind of started when I was looking around. And of course, this is just my experience. I know everyone has their own story, but I remember thinking we were in a townhome at that time. And, like brim closet full of things and debt up into our eyeballs and just like, all the things. And I was working for an employer at that time. And I remember just thinking after watching the video, um, why do I have all this stuff? And I really had to have this heart to heart moment with myself and do the uncomfortable thing of acknowledging the fact that I wanted people to perceive me a certain way. And not to go too far back into my adolescence, but because I always tend to look a bit on the younger side, I felt like not a lot of people took me seriously. And in the different spheres that I used to work, I was in the legal field for a while. I worked with youth for a while. I had a lot to say, but I feel like I was never really given that opportunity because I didn't look the part. So I made it my mission to look important so that people would hear my voice. And so that's kind of where it started that I began to accumulate all of these things like certain brands, dress certain ways, never wear the same thing twice because God forbid,
Mhm.
and just really live this type of lifestyle so that people could notice me and hear the things that I had to say. And when it came to that realization, I was like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? And I can't remember at the top of my head right now, but there was something spiritual, like this very huge, strong, wish I could remember moment that I don't know, something came up. I think it was when the rich young man came to Jesus and he says, I follow all the commandments and everything. And he said,
Mhm.
okay, now get rid of your stuff and come follow me. And he left. And I felt like that was me. Like I was not willing to give up this. Like, I love you, God, but I need my things too because it's good. I know you love me and everything, but I need everybody else to love me too. And when I realized, oh my goodness, I am that man, it felt so ugly. And I remember I was nursing my daughter. I like put her down, went into my closet, and then took out everything that reminded me of I bought this to impress this person. I bought this to impress that person. And it just kind of created this, I don't know, this avalanche effect almost of like, how many things do I have in my home that I purchased because I want someone to think of me a certain way? And I think that's something that has always really stuck with me, even coming into now we live in a 4-bedroom home and you think, oh, more space and cupboards to fill things with. And it's like, no, because when people walk into my home, what do I want them to think? What do I want them? How do I want them to feel? Well, in all honesty, I want them to know that God is here. I want them to know that we are a family that loves God. And that to me is the most important. I remember I used to keep all of these books because I wanted people to think I was a reader. I'm horrible at catching up with reading. I know, Kylie, you and I have had a conversation about this. I still have books from like 3 years ago that I haven't opened. And it was so freeing, just like taking stacks of stuff. And it's like, who cares? I'm not going to read the book. And you know what? It does not make me a bad person. I don't have to make this extra purchase because God knows my heart, and that's all that I need. I mean, when people walk in, I don't want them to see like, "Oh, what a beautiful, just pristine house." I want them to be like, "You know what? This is a house where it's well lived in, and I can tell that you're Catholic or some kind of Christian because of what I see." That is what I want people to take away, and I want them to feel welcomed. And that's not what I was giving at that. It was this certain persona, and for me, that was very in being able to finally declutter a lot of the things that were keeping me captive of this, desire to be loved by the world. per se. And so once that happened, then the organizational part, just became a lot easier because I had less things to be able to work with. And every so now and then I still have to remind myself, why are you doing it? Why did you buy this? And I think it has helped with every baby. I didn't have a baby shower with my last two pregnancies. And it's like, you know what? I don't need anything. Yeah, it would be nice to have a few stuff here and there, but it's like I'm not trying to impress anyone. I just only the necessities and that's it. Like I don't need the newest this. I don't need this. I'm free to give certain things that I remember I would not want to give away certain stuff because it's like, well, if I get rid of this and they notice that it's gone, then it's going to hurt their feelings and they're going to hate me. No, they're allowed to feel upset if I no longer have that, but I can do the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, and be a better communicator about what I would like in my home. And hopefully people will, this is so easier said than done, by the way. And hopefully, the people that I care about are going to be okay with that and then be okay with the fact that I may not keep everything. Because I think sometimes it's not only that maybe we don't have an issue with buying things, but it's the fact that we don't want to get rid of stuff that someone gave us because it's like, oh, I don't want to bend. And I completely understand it. But I think this has been a transformational moment where I can do the things that I was avoiding before. Like actually
Mhm.
have the communication with love and just be honest with myself. Like, who is this for? Is this to serve? Am I serving the Lord with if I make this purchase? Or, is it fitting some kind of, you know, desire to please, to give this impression of
Yes.
myself?
I was
Yeah.
just thinking, what a great question to ask yourself is who am I trying to please by purchasing this thing or keeping this thing? But also, what am I trying to hide? I
Mm,
think that that's a question that
yes.
comes to my mind is we hide behind all this stuff because there's
Hmm.
something that we don't want people to see that makes us
Yeah.
feel vulnerable or exposed. And that carries over into our prayer life. And we know this, I mean, even from scripture, Adam and Eve in the garden, right? They hid. They hid from the Lord because there was things that they didn't want him to see, but he sees it anyway. He just waits for us to allow him to shine light on it and love us in it. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. But sometimes the growth in our spiritual life does come through different avenues. You've done the mindset, Catholic coaching, training. You know what it's like when we start to get those thoughts out and bring them into the light that we've been hiding. And that's hard. I mean, in a call with the clients, in 20 minutes, you can start to unbury a little bit. In an hour, they've given you 50 different thoughts. But it isn't until later in the call where it's like, actually, it wasn't about work. It wasn't about this other thing. It wasn't about this other thing. It was about this one thing that I really didn't want to talk about
Hmm.
that I've been hiding and thinking it was work and thinking that it was this relationship and thinking that it was all these stressors and that I was too busy, which maybe is still a problem, but usually there's something else underneath there.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love the fact that you said that it just pours into your prayer life because it really does. I think it's important not only to declare the physical. I think that's a good place to start. But I think in the habit of continuously reflecting on the things that you possess is now looking at the spiritual, like what is in my mind that I'm holding on to that is not serving me, that I'm holding on to just because it feels useful at the moment, but I'm just trying to avoid the real uncomfortable issue. And how can I use this opportunity of decluttering your mind per se, to glorify God, to, grow because it's there for a purpose. Like you said, he's just kind of waiting for you to, it's like you're watching your toddler reach a milestone. And then when they finally do, it's like, yes, I knew you could do it. But you're just waiting for them. And it's in the same way, God, probably cheering up in heaven because it's like, they finally figured it out. And then having that courage to do something about it and offering it up. Uh, gosh, I love that you said that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
recognizing it and then taking action. And I know my husband and I have talked about this. Some people are messier than others. Okay. I'm just going to say that out there, especially our ADHD friends, like executive functioning. Some people are just messier than others. My house is always going to be messier than my sister's for a lot of reasons, right? One, our brains just work differently. We also prioritize different things. And that's just the way it is. I love organizing things. I love having things organized and I love having it clean. But sometimes it's just not because there are other things. Getting my prayer time in the morning is more important to me. Sometimes it's spending time with the kids. And I'm not saying that's not important to her either or other people who keep their house cleans, but I just prioritize different things. However, my husband and I know this. It can lead to more anxiety when you are walking into a messy room. It's a distraction when you're trying to pray and you see stuff all over, right? So my prayer room and my office are the same room. And I sit in different places when I do different things. But sometimes I have books all over the place and I have to just stop and say, okay, I need to take a half hour to clean because this is affecting my prayer life.
Yeah.
And we just have to recognize those things.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we're in definitely one of those seasons where it just it's healing and prayerful for me to just clean when my children are not around. I'm like, "Hey, mom, thanks. See you in 4 hours," and then just get everything done, and it gives me that time to be reflective, and it makes space so that when other things happen, I'm not as stressed because I that is one thing that I notice when everything is chaotic in my home because it can very much get chaotic. Um, I start feeling that internally, and I notice that even I get a little bit snappier when someone asks to bring another toy. "You already have all these toys out, like, why are you asking for Legos now, of all things?" I notice that sometimes is like, how can I run my home in a way that it's easier to manage so that when those things happen, I'm not as explosive because I'm being affected by my environment, and it really is hard. It really is hard because then and I know your children are older than mine, as they start getting different interests, there's more things that they like and different activities, and you want to respect, the things that they like, and you don't want to just tell everybody like this is how it has to be, but respecting their individuality, but also having things within parameters so that it's easier to manage. And I think that's the biggest goal for me when it comes to decluttering and organizing is how can you make it manageable so that it doesn't steal your peace. I mean, so that when it does get a little chaotic, it doesn't take you forever and you're not like sitting there and hating yourself. And it's like, why do I own so many things? Where it's just the messes can happen, but it's not a big deal.
Yes. Yes. So good. I want to make sure that everyone knows where you're at before we get to our prayer tip. I know you're super active on Instagram. You want to tell everybody where you're at?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the place that you're gonna find me the most. M Moore underscore coaching is probably where I'm gonna be the most. I do have a website, but I need to revamp a little bit. But if you want to know a little bit what my face looks like and a little bit more of my mission, that is a good place to be. So that my website is Mitzi Moore Catholic Coaching.com.
And I will drop those in the show notes for anyone who wants to know how to spell those or if you can't find it. But I want to get to our prayer tip. And also, as we journey into our prayer tip, if you want to reflect on anything in your own faith life and how this has helped you as you've kind of journeyed, feel free to go there as well. So, you told me that your favorite prayer tip is to just talk to God. It's so
Yeah.
simple. Elaborate.
I remember in my youth feeling very intimidated by prayer because I felt like it had to look a certain way. And I remember one particular a youth group friend who was dabbling between the Catholic Church and a non-denominational church. He would volunteer to pray. I've never, even as an adult, I don't volunteer to pray because I'm like, I don't want to pray out loud. And what like my prayer, it's always been a little, discomfort point for me. But I remember him just like having these elaborate, like 2, 3, 4 minute long prayers and like Father God and all of this. And I'm just like, but how do you know what to say? It just felt like it just rolled off the tip of his tongue. And it's like, man, I don't know if I'm a good Catholic because I don't pray good enough. And I remember that kind of always stuck with me. It's like, yes, I'm a catechist and I do all of this stuff, but prayer just felt a little bit uncomfortable for me. And until I mean, one thing I always did was I always talked to God, kind of like the way you talk to yourself sometimes. It's like, yeah, just same thing, but I just aimed it towards God. And that has, I think, really changed my life because it has my whole days becomes a prayer. It's not just I pray at a s and I do pray at specific times, but it's not like my prayer is not exclusive to when I'm in a church or when I wake up or at night. It's all day long. And I think that has helped me so much in feeling that he is with me and feeling that we have the relationship of a father and daughter. Because sometimes I could just be doing something that I know I had prayed about, and then something like, God has those funny moments where it could just something happens in your life and I'll just like look up. I'm like, really? Okay, I see you. I'm like, that's what you were trying to tell me, huh? But just I don't talk to him like he's just obviously there's the very honor, glorious type of prayer. And yes, that respectful time does come, but I just talk to him like he's right here. Like, really? Did you see this? Did you see that? Really? And I think it helps me in just using just regular words and sometimes really big emotions. Because I know one, that he can handle it, and two, it helps me not to hide from him. It's easier. I know we were just talking about things that we may not want to admit. It helps me to be more aware of what I'm actually feeling when it's like, okay, God, I don't even know what to do right now. And I think one of the most profound prayerful moments I ever had happened earlier this year. And it was when I was having almost like this very angry internal shouting match with God because I was actually at a church and I couldn't vocalize what I was thinking inside. But it was in that biggest moment of surrender that God actually responded almost like this. And I had never, ever in my 33 years of life had a moment like that. And I think in the practice of just having these conversations with him, I've been able to feel his presence. I've been able to feel like, I know you're here. I know you're here. I can recognize when I'm growing a little bit distant, but it just really fosters this relationship that I think I would not have if I was intimidated by this idea that I had to talk to him a certain way. Um, and that's my biggest recommendation because I actually get a lot of parents that reach out to me. Well, I don't know how to pray. Like, how do you start to pray? And to me now it becomes very natural. But 10 years ago, I would say, learn the Our Father, Hail Mary, sign of the cross, you know? But it just,
Same.
I think it has helped me so much. I mean, like that'd be like, here's a list of prayers, but I mean, it's more than that. And I think when we admire so much like the prayers of the saints and everything, it's like, oh man, I want to be just like them. But God is not telling us to be like them and copy their prayers. We can be inspired by them, but we have the ability to create those type of prayers too. And it just starts by having a conversation.
Yes, so good. Dana Nygaard was on the podcast quite some time ago, and I remember talking to her about praying out loud because, like you, I saw other people and I was like, "That's amazing. Never gonna do it. I'm never gonna volunteer. If you call me out to lead prayer, I will have a mini panic attack." And now I do it all of the time. I mean, every time I get on a client call, I lead prayer. If I finish my spiritual direction, they tell us, like, you are the spiritual director, you are leading the prayer. You do not let the directee lead the prayer, right? Before the podcast, we prayed. But the tip that Dana gave was just start talking. And if you just start talking, the Holy Spirit will take over.
Mm,
And
mhm.
I love that because it's so true. You just start talking and you don't worry about anything else. For me, I just close my eyes and it's just you start talking and he
Mm.
provides everything else. And there's no right words. I mean, we talk about in coaching, define the terms. What is right? What is right?
Yeah.
What is even right?
Mhm.
Whatever's on your heart.
Exactly. The good and the not so good. I think he wants to hear all of it. I mean, he knows all of it. He would love to hear your voice saying it.
Yes. To have the conversation. It's like you meet with your best friend and you know they're seriously struggling with something and you want to talk about it, but you're like, I can't be the person to bring it up. They have to be ready to tell me about it.
Mhm.
And they have to bring it up. And that's the Lord. He's like sitting there waiting, like, ooh, I see you're really struggling. I want to help you. I want to help you so bad, but you have to invite me in. You have to
Yes.
tell me.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's another gift that comes with motherhood is I think I sometimes I it helps to simultaneously see myself the adult as the child but also the parent. And what I mean by that is when I'm sometimes I have this like almost out of body experience when seeing me have this like really hard conversation with my daughter and I'm thinking like, "Oh my goodness, this is probably how God feels." And there's moments that I just remember that and then put myself as a child. It's like, oh God, I hear you. This situation I had with Keziah, like, this is what you mean by that. Or I
Yeah.
realize that I'm acting in that certain way and it's beautiful. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yes. My kids, again, kids. My kids tell me that all the time, whether I'm doing my hair or whatever it is, getting ready, they'll come tell me, Mom, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. We love you. You look wonderful. We love you. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. If I'm working something, Mom, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I know I'm so grateful to God that He has helped me instill that in them. And now they're helping me remind myself that I need to be gentler with myself. Mitzi, this has been incredible. I'm so grateful for your friendship and to have you in my life, but also just to have you share all of your wisdom with everyone listening.
Thank you so much. Likewise, this has been awesome. And I really could talk about this for hours on end. So thank you so much for the conversation. I love it.
Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie M. Hein. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.